Darren is the host of Kickoff Sessions podcast, founder and CEO of Voix, and a great friend to me. This man has inspired me to take podcasting seriously and launch the one that you are listening to right now. In this episode, we discuss what it means to become one of one as a creator and what it means to build a value-driven brand. I'm so excited to share this one with you. Cheers, Darren. Follow your raw obsession. Focus on one thing, become unbeatable and become one of one. There is no hack or trick that will do the work for you. It's a decade-long process of you inching towards the target. One day, one rep at a time. Time horizon is the differentiator between winners and losers. So first of all, how did you find your thing and how did you become one of one?
If you take a step back, right, everyone is trying to get into their space or find a space to be like respected or be an individual or like be a status individual or to get that attention. But I had done a lot of that stuff when I was young. I had put all my time into education to become like really good as a student. I'd gone into big companies to appease bigger people as a result. And a lot of that stuff never really fulfilled me. I started a bunch of companies when I was young that were doing good money, but never really kind of liked what I was doing. So then I realized that there was like a deeper level of what's going on here. So it's not the fact that you can go to work or go start a business, and I was doing e-commerce at the time, and make X amount of money, and that's it. There was something else like at play. And that was the issue. The issue was that I couldn't find what it is that I wanted to do. So like most people, they spend a lot of their 20s just being degenerate and running around in circles, doing a lot of degeneracy stuff, which I had done, bear in mind. And that is like a cope. It's a way to like basically let those years of your 20s just cascade. And you basically don't achieve what you want to achieve. And it's fine because you and your friends and so on are all out partying. But then when the pandemic hit, it really exasperated the element of like what it is I want to do and why do I want to do it. Because we were all at home. I was working in consulting at the time and I could have started XY hustle, side hustle and done X, Y, and Z. But I knew deep down that ranking up a load of cash or a load of revenue or posting on Twitter was not going to actually solve what I wanted to solve. What I wanted to solve was that search for meaning and purpose. And that's when I was heavily down Lex Friedman at the time, and he always mentioned Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And that for me was like, okay, it's literally the search and the pursuit of meaning through the vessel of something difficult. And for anyone who doesn't know, Man's Search for Meaning is basically this guy's exploration of being in Auschwitz. And during that period of time, he finds meaning in the most horrific elements of life. You know, he's working in a work camp. It's like -7 degrees. He's moving snow and he has no shoes on and he's basically getting frostbite and dying, yet he sees a robin and that robin is symbolic of like the beauty of life. And that's kind of what made me realize the fact that the beauty in what you do is not about like what the task is, it's about how you devise like meaning and purpose through it. And that for me then was like this kind of very deep exploration phase of, okay, I know nothing. I'm young. I'm 24, 25. I want to be able to learn more and learn from people who've gone and done it. So that's when I started a podcast. Because the whole idea was like, I know nothing and I'm broke. So if I want to be able to learn something, I can do this through my podcast. And it's like that feeling like we even have today. The second you hit record, and for anyone who doesn't know the feeling, you should really record a podcast for that. Like there's just a special like energy and like tonality that happens, right? And it was that like spark in my brain that was like pure, just like it was in complete alignment. And I knew that that was what was in alignment. But the biggest thing there was the fact that I knew I wasn't good at it. So most people would look at me now or look at Kickoff Sessions now and think like it's this well-oiled machine. But the beauty in it was the fact that it was a piece of shit for years because I didn't have the money or the resources or the skill or the knowledge to be able to work on it. But that was the pursuit of the meaning, was the fact that it was meant to be difficult, and it is difficult, and up until this morning, it's still difficult. But the fact that I was able to figure out that, okay, this incremental increase in episode number, literally as you see it on the internet, is a way for me to like, one, follow curiosity, follow obsession, go down the rabbit hole, be like one of one, be a category of one, and do this in such a way that I'm competing with no one else. Like, I don't actually compete with anyone else. I see other people do really well, but it's not really a competition. And that was the whole idea, was that this pursuit is not something that, you know, you're going to kill your competition with, or you're doing it for all different virtues. The main reason you're doing it is largely for yourself, because what you will realize on this kind of pursuit or whatever pursuit is that the people you think that you're going to appease by doing it are not even interested anyway. Chicks don't really give a shit if you have a podcast. Other guys don't really care to some degree as well. They don't care about what you've learned from what you're doing. It's mainly about an internal journey and like struggle basically to overcome that element, right? And that's why it's like a commitment to basically like lifelong learning. And in that pursuit then is when all the lessons come, you can apply those lessons, but it becomes this longer time horizon element, because unlike what you see on Twitter, it's not going to happen overnight. And unlike what you see on Instagram, you're not going to get the Lambo anyway. So the only thing you can do is really commit to the obsession. And when you commit to the obsession, all the goals and the milestones, they all just become internal like basically like check marks that you're trying to achieve. But they're not external check marks. You can make them appease to be external check marks for whatever reason, for virtue signaling, but they're ultimately for you.
Viktor Frankl, in his suffering, saw the robin and he still found beauty. What is it that you find beauty in? What are the moments that you have that reignite you, re-inspire you when it gets tough, when you're deep in outreach or whatever it is? What are the moments that just light you back up and you find the beauty?
It's a good question. It's a change over time, right? So you do something very difficult. You go to the gym, you start a business, and it's like horrific in the beginning. And people think that stays forever, right? But that actually doesn't stay forever. It's just a phase, right? It's like the wall of resistance. So I actually have started to enjoy the wall of resistance. And it actually dates back to my competing and bodybuilding days, because that was a period of time, like training and physical appearance is a great like way to gauge progress, especially with the gym, is because when you make those changes, or those sacrifices, you never really see that impact. But it's only over a course of time that all of a sudden, 8 weeks in, you've made those drastic increases. You've gotten stronger in the gym, you've improved your diet, you've improved your health, you've improved your sleep. So it's that delayed reaction. And that's the beauty of like the infinite game, is because as part of the infinite game, you know that when you reach that wall of resistance, it's just the next level in the game. And playing the infinite game means that if you go up against that threshold continuously, you will break through that level in the game, and then you will come up to the next threshold. So we've had this several times even in the business, getting it off the floor. We have no money. We were losing money for many months. And then getting to having like $5,000 or $10,000 a month, and then 20,000, and then 30,000, and then 50,000, and then looking even at further, could we even do more? It's not the fact that they're like, again, status symbols and status numbers. They're just elements of the game. And why business and why fitness is very applicable is because it's a very numeric base. They're the only two parameters that you can truly judge based on someone's physique, you know, how they look, how they train, what they're doing, as well as in a business, the actual underneaths of what's happening in a business, right? Like, you know, where they're like financially, let's say, put it that way. So that's kind of like when you reach those huge, like challenging moments, is like, okay, where was I 3 months ago? Where was I 6 months ago? Where was I 9 months ago? And what you'll find is asymmetrical returns. We speak about this a lot. So what you're trying to do is identify in life where you get asymmetrical returns. So in the beginning, it's 1 to none. You either put one bit of effort in and you get nothing in return. And that can happen for a very long period of time. It can happen in like a tech startup for many years, like Uber did, right? But over time, you'll get 1-to-1 returns. You put a bit of effort in and then you'll get one bit of outcome. Ideally, what will happen is you'll get asymmetrical returns as time goes on. You'll put one bit of effort in and you'll get 3 elements of return, or 4, or 5, or 6. And the best entrepreneurs and the best creators basically are able to identify what their one piece of activity is that will lead them to asymmetrical returns. So for me with the podcast, it was an absolute fucking grind for many years. And then over time, then we were able to put one bit of episode out and then it could get hundreds of thousands of views, or one clip out and get many million views. Or I can send one DM and that DM will become a guest, right? Same in the business context. Initially, you don't know what you're doing, but over time, you get that asymmetrical returns. And same in fitness, right? A lot of the best guys can always stay in shape. And it's not because they have a special diet. It's just because they've done the work for like a decade. You look at someone like Rob Lipsett, who's a massive influence on me. He's basically built his physique over 15 years to a degree whereby he can like not get out of shape, right? He can obviously just eat a few pizzas and shit, but if he was to eat like a pizza for a week straight, he could go back and just be shredded again in like 1 or 2 weeks. He's not necessarily genetically gifted. He's just built that strong foundations. So a lot of people will struggle with that because they think that like life is unfair and they don't have that way to deploy that energy. But that's kind of like the idea of like building in your 20s and laying the foundations in your 20s and having the deciding decade to be, where can I find that? So for me, you know, it's been a combination of communication, sales, marketing, even like operations. I'm an organized individual. So I know that those individual components can be positioned in a way to give me asymmetrical returns, which is, I think, how most people should view their life, but they don't, unfortunately.
I love that, man. So obviously throughout the journey, there's been so many different stages, and those different stages have required different, you know, it's a different output from you at different times. Now, you often talk about kind of like gimmicky hacks. So everyone chases hacks, but follow the principles. So hacks are gimmicky styles, controversial topics, flashy status symbols like the Rolex and the Lambo. But principles are based on psychology. They are elements of human nature and behavior. Hacks change, humans remain the same. Give humans what humans want. So what hack traps do you see people along that journey falling into as they work their way up? And what underlying principles have you had kind of whispering in the back of your head as you've been taking these various actions? What principles have stayed the same?
This is across everything, right? So people want the shortcuts. And the reason why they want the shortcuts is they think that they can grow super fast on like TikTok or grow up a podcast by just, you know, calling out like a big name or super controversial or whatnot. And they're basically just trying to like hack their way to the result. It's like basically when people just do these crazy like tea diets, right? Because they think that's what's going to lose all the fat. But it's actually not what loses fat. It's being in a calorie deficit and training and sleeping well, right? But they try to look at ways to make a shortcut in this. And then the hacks, they just rise to the top. And the individuals who take the hacks are the ones you should largely stay away from, right? So for instance, let's say if it's in like a social media context, if people are trying to hack their way to growing, they'll be looking for like sounds and trending topics and so on and so forth, right? But they're going in the wrong direction because what they're trying to do is they're trying to stay like ahead of like the algorithm game, right? And this is a huge issue for people because they're not understanding what is actually happening underneath. And the reason why this affects them so much is you'll see these individuals complain about the algorithm, right? And I call them like the TikTok algo whores. They basically just chase what's happening on these platforms, but not having a fundamental understanding of like basic psychology, human nature, and really why people work with you or just get attention. So basically the way I kind of evolved this is like looking at attention and retention. So yes, the hacks can get you attention. If I go on a podcast and start talking loads of shit about women and females, I could get loads of attention. I get loads of viral clips and so on and so forth. But that won't actually retain people. And the reason why is because people that are following the hacks are just focused on the attention. And I've spoken to people, man, and they say, well, I get 40 million impressions a month. And I go looking at their content, and half of them is like red pill, all this kind of shit, right? And all it is just top of funnel attention. But they never have the fundamentals of why people actually stick around. And these fundamentals are based on real core beliefs of like status. People want status. Like it or not, they do. That's why people have podcasts. Relationships, they want to be liked, they want to be around people, they want like power, they want influence, they want authority, they want basically ways to showcase them as an individual. There's also more of the basic necessities of like food, safety, comfort, really big with females as well. Comfort and safety, having that different elements, right? And people just want that strong base and they go all the way back to evolutionary biology. Just go all the way back to it. So when content is being made, people will flash the Rolex because that's the status element, but they've never actually had the authority or the experience or the influence to be able to retain users. So the whole reason why podcasting is one, difficult, and two, why it works better than anything else in the world is because it's all based on retention. I can obviously have a viral clip around, a controversial figure, but I'm not going to retain the individual. So when it's based on things that people actually want, so let's use an example of relationships. People want basically to have better relationships, stronger relationships with individuals, their loved ones, their parents, and so on and so forth. If I could actually provide meaningful information around that to improve your relationship, decrease the stress around having bad relationships, and decrease the chances of divorces and so on and so forth, that means I'm someone who's like reputable. Who's a perfect example of that? Sadia Khan. She's amazing at doing that. She tells a story really, really well. And then someone based on elements of, let's say, making money or having that kind of prestige and basically doing it in a very normal, nice kind of way is like Dakota Robertson. You have those fundamental ways of being able to garner attention and have retention. So attention and retention. Most people will overlook those elements, right? And they're not really looking to decode why something has worked for them and why something is working. And this is a huge thing I do with our clients, is the fact that, for context, we have like a media company and it works from big companies, big tech companies, all the way down to startups. It's not about something that's worked, it's why it's worked. And this is the massive kicker, is that people don't realize why they've come to them. They've come to them for an actual solution. Whereas most people are fucking this up because they're looking at me, and no one cares about you. Literally nobody cares about you. They only care about the problem you can solve. So someone who's listening to this podcast should be looking to gain like their influence and authority and build, a social media presence, but also have the human element too, right? Because that's basically what we're creating this podcast around. But if you are only creating this, so you get leads for your business, one, it's not going to work, and two, no one's going to give a shit. And that's the unfortunate truth, is that for many years, I was creating in a vacuum, pushing outwards, saying like, look, this is what I've done, this is what I've done, and it just doesn't work like that. It might work like that on like Love Island. It doesn't work like that in the real world. And that's like the big, big change. And as people are becoming more savvy, they're realizing that all this hacks and the tricks and all this shit, it's just not working. So you have this kind of divide with creators now at this stage, whereby you have people that are educational, entertainment based, and everyone else, right? And where I really situate myself is a combination between education and entertainment. Because education is like, let's say, kind of drier content like Lex Friedman. Entertainment is, let's say, Kim Kardashian, just absolute trash. In the middle, the intersection, how you can balance it, is having really solid understanding of content that appeases the people's deep desires and how we can actually fundamentally help them, and also doing it in an educational and entertaining way, right? Like this, it's entertaining and educational. So at that point, that's why it's effective, but not leaning into one or the other. And that's why you'll see, a lot of like Harvard researchers who can't really put out good content. And then you'll see a lot of like OnlyFans chicks who also can't get anyone to buy their stuff, even though they're putting their ass out, because of the fact that no one really cares about it.
We all know that Instagram is the new business card. It is your portal to the world, and it is the world's portal to you. The way things are going, if you're not online, you're going to be left behind over the next few years. So whether it's for networking, your business, or even relationships, your Instagram says everything about how seriously you're taking yourself and your work. It's where you invite people into your world. If you're a modern creator and you're looking to grow and scale your personal brand, you want to get paid more to be yourself and offer your unique value. You want to connect with other like-minded creators and build something that you are deeply proud of. You've become fatigued of everyone offering magic solutions online, and you actually just want to focus on delivering your unique value and what actually works. You want to connect with real creators, real artists, and real entrepreneurs. That is exactly why I launched the Modern Creator Group. We work on your unique positioning to make you one of one and a key person of influence in your specific niche. We optimize your socials to gain attention and then convert that attention into paying clients. And we focus on creating a value-driven brand that doesn't rely on pushy sales techniques. So this group is for long-term creators playing long-term games. You are looking to grow with other creators and create a deep impact while scaling your income. Click the link in the description to find out more about how to join Modern Creator, or feel free to reach out to me on Instagram and I can give you more details about how to join.
Giving, isn't it, and attracting. So for me, and I know we've spoken about this before, it's that idea of kind of using content to live with someone. So you want to be the little voice in their head that when they are next faced with a certain decision, you're there going, whispering that bit of advice or whatever it was. This is what worked with me. And then when they take the action and they see the result, that's when kind of the trust and authority is built. And that's like the best way to build trust and authority, is like change people's lives. It's hard though, man, because like you said, attention online, people want to see the ass. Like you're throwing stuff out on Instagram. There's some very high quality memes on Instagram, like brilliant memes, and some great asses as well.
Yeah,
there are.
Sure.
I look at them; they're great. So, how do you kind of change the narrative for people to kind of be invested in themselves more when they open up these apps and look, this content that is life-changing. There's little bits of nuggets that could be the thing that are going to open up whatever that thing is for you. how do you kind of like change the narrative? How do you use content to even change the narrative? How do you fight against the memes and the asses? Do you just remove yourself from the platform? Do you go, this isn't the platform for me? But how do you need to fight against it? Is it a battle? How does that work?
There's two sides to this exchange. There's a consumer and there's a creator. So the consumer can only change when the creator changes. And how the creator changes is building that knowledge base and building that content that's actually there to help someone. So this is where we go back to, who do I serve? Why do I serve them? And how do I serve them? The how is the vehicle. It can be Reels, TikToks, fucking podcasts. It doesn't matter. The who is more important than anything else, and what I'm actually going to serve them for. So I spent years, like quite literally years, learning how this podcast stuff works. And I still don't know everything, but I can share what I've learned based on those years, and it becomes very valuable for people who are creators or even podcasters, right? At a larger scale, because the principles, again, are most important. It's not about the podcast. If you don't like podcasting, it doesn't matter. It's the principles that are important. So I can share that information that's really looking to solve someone's problem. Now, again, the people that I'm trying to solve problems for are generally people who are not in a position to buy stuff, right? Because they're not looking, they don't have massive budgets. So we're just trying to help people either get started at 1 to 0 or go maybe 1 to 5. Not necessarily like 5 to 10, right? Because they might go and pay for paid programs. So we're basically using this as an entire hub model to be able to showcase people like, hey, you can come learn this, get a lot of good value from this. And here's the kicker. When you implement this or when you learn from it, the time delay here is what's important, is the fact that if you're with kickoff sessions, if you're with Sparks podcast for many months, many years, you will learn stuff that will become applicable and you'll be able to utilize months from now, years from now, and so on and so forth. So they see that like genuine value, and that's how they build trust. Daniel Priestley pointed out that it takes roughly 7 to 8 hours of consuming someone's content to buy from you. Forget even buying from you. The whole idea is just to trust you, because the trust buying is a byproduct of trust, right? Especially for like anyone who's creating remotely high ticket stuff, even like $1,000, right? Which could be considered high ticket. So the reason why that's important is because when you are committed to the long term, and we extend the time horizon, and we truly believe in what we're doing, that we are helping this individual consumer with this product and service and with this type of content for a long period of time, that's when not only will your content work, but you'll see the impact on your individuals. A lot of people that work with me, or I'm an advisor on a bunch of startups, they're guys that just listened to the podcast for a few years and they went off to build a couple of companies, and they asked did they want to be an investor and advisor. So there were just guys that were just consuming content, and they just realized and they started learning from it as a result. And that's the beauty of it. So there is that content out there. You can go, very, very like high level in terms of videos like Iman, and then there's more like grungy podcast stuff like my stuff, and so on and so forth. So it depends what flavor of individual you are. But a big change here is on the consumer side. And this is actually where I got it wrong for quite some time. I used to think that Instagram was just for ass and abs. So we never even pushed my podcast through Instagram for a lot of years. We mainly used LinkedIn because firstly it was a career podcast in the beginning, and it was a lot of like professionals that were on LinkedIn. But it worked really well, and I was able to get the heartbeat of someone who was someone there to actually curtail their world, which is social media, in a way to be inducive of learning. So they came on, they saw a bunch of like value posts and so on and so forth that they were learning from. And at the time, we were helping people get into like financial services careers and whatnot. And it was actually working because people would listen, watch, and learn, and actually interact as a result. And it was only until those individuals changed the narrative of what they're there to consume that they were able to learn like that from me. So then when I went to Instagram, I didn't go to Instagram to be like, right, now it's time to fucking buy a Rolex. So $16,000 Rolex, $16 Casio watch, right? Time to go flash my Casio watch. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to do what we did on LinkedIn, which was bring that educational content in an entertaining way to Instagram. I've just gutted my Instagram. I've got rid of 99.9% of people that I followed. I'm down to like 50 people, and all those individuals are on a similar path. They're all creating content. They're all entrepreneurs, they're founders, they're agency owners, they're media owners, so on and so forth. And I'm just learning from them. So when I get on my feed, this is the funniest part. When I get onto my feed, guess what I see on my homepage? Guess.
Inspiring people you're looking up to, yeah.
Nothing. Because they don't even post. That's the funniest thing. When I go on the homepage, it says you haven't seen a new post in like 4 days. I'm like, oh, great. That's literally what happens on my Instagram.
Oh, no
Because
way.
most people have just put up like one post a week or whatever. And when I click on to put up something on my side, I don't see it. So that's the world that I have created. So, and I'm really big on this like anti-media approach, right? I think it's a huge part because I think like media in general is like very toxic and it's like a poison and literally infects your brain. And I can loads of data to prove that's true. But anyway, the reason how I started doing that unplugging system was firstly on LinkedIn, because people give a lot of shit about LinkedIn. And the way simple answer to that is just unfollow the people, right? There's a bunch of virtue signaling people, you know, putting up fucking LGBT flags and all this kind of stuff. If you don't like it, whatever, just disable it, right? You can disable it. Instead, I filled out my LinkedIn with young entrepreneurs, guys that are doing 4 or 5 million a year, super ambitious guys, and it was great.
It's the world you're in.
It's just the world I was in. I have no news. I used to be. Bear in mind, I used to work in trading. I used to have CNBC, CNN. I used to have like NASDAQ news. I used to have everything on my phone. I just got rid of it all. And I was like, you know, I was a big trader. Bear in mind, I worked in trading. I'd built trading platforms. So I was up to date with the markets. And all of a sudden, I was like, fuck the markets. Just deleted everything. And then as a result, that world, again, back to the focus, back to what we're doing, back to the mission, became shorter and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So as me, who's the creator now, for people that are the consumer, I know that what I was looking for starting a year or 2 years ago, and now I simply create that. The last aspect I'll say on this as well is the community aspect. This is something that I had neglected, but I've put a lot of emphasis on over the last 24 months, which is the community dictates what you should do with your content. And everyone fucks this up. Everybody fucks this up. When I start working with someone, I'm like, what does the community say? What did they ask you? What did they ask for? They're like, we've never got a comment on YouTube. I'm like, and now you see that you have a problem. Because the community drives what people want, what you create, how you solve their problems. Right? It's a customer feedback loop. Everyone fucks this up. It's like the lean startup by Eric Ries. You go out with a hypothesis of what you think people want. You validate it by asking people, is this what they want? And you have that feedback loop. And everyone's going to be like, well, that's obvious. But nobody does it, because often you'll hear stuff that you don't actually want to hear. That they're not interested in this, they're interested in this. They're not interested in that, they're interested in this. So I frequently run feedback loops through a lot of my audience. Again, my audience isn't millions of people, but I find the heartbeat. And the heartbeat is usually something that I didn't even think of. Recently, I heard that people wanted more relationships. They wanted more grungy stories from the beginning, actually 0 to 1K. They wanted more stories around that. They wanted more like personal stuff and personal stories, not the tools and techniques, which is interesting, right? And if you look back at the biggest people, entrepreneurs / creators, who got this right, Christian Guzman, Rob Lipset, Joe Delaney, even Max Tuning, all these big entrepreneurs now, again, with time kicking in, they all were working very closely with the community. So they were on both sides of the consumer and the creator. And because they were so in tune with what was happening, it was shooting fish in a barrel. Max Tuning released his like candy sour, like sour strips candy. He did like $40 million in the first couple of years. Why? He understood the problem. He created content around the problem. He had a really engaged audience, and they liked, know, and trust him, and they wanted to fuck with him. And as a result, it was just simple. And it's very obvious to see this, but we don't reverse engineer it though. And that's the problem. That's why people release courses, no one buys them. Release products, no one buys them. They put up a load of red pill tweets and no one interacts with them after a while, because they haven't built the real cult following for people that actually want to engage with them.
So there's so many different ways we can go. There's loads there, man. I want to dive into the network, and I want to talk about how to attract high quality people and allow those people into your life. I think that's going to be interesting. I want to talk more about removing people from your life as kind of like the other side of that. I also love this idea of, and it's, you know, this is what Sam Ovens has been doing for the last, when he disappeared off, he just had the school community. He's got that school group that is like a Facebook group, and he's like, just, tell me what you think, and we'll make those changes. Like, that's literally what he's doing. He started a podcast, stopped it, because he was like, I was thinking about like the camera angle and the lighting, and I just didn't want the energy. He just wants to be focused on the group. And he's replied to me in that group. He replies to everyone in that group who gives feedback, and then he makes the product better. Now, Hormozi's involved, that thing's going to blow up. School's going to just, well, it already has.
It already has, yeah.
It already has. Also interesting about kind of unplugging yourself from the markets, unplugging yourself from the news, Did you know that there was aliens in Miami the other week? Did you hear about that?
No.
Yeah, I heard about this the other day, man.
Why?
So I've been slowly unplugging myself. I used to be obsessed with the news, particularly American politics. I would really, that was my drama that I loved. Someone told me this is a mad story actually. Someone the other day, they were like, "Oh, you heard about the aliens in Miami?" What? No. Oh, it's been all over the news everywhere around the world.
Only question I have in that is that if you can change it, it's important.
This is the thing,
right?
Yeah.
Is that like, I'm an ambitious individual. I really want to have a really big impact. Right? Across kickoff sessions, it has helped thousands of young guys figure out what the fuck they want to do with their life. And that's a big impact play for me. And I really want to do that. And I'm really about that. And I really believe that. But I stay within my lane.
Yeah.
And there's a few things that I can impact, and I really want to have a big impact, but there's a few things I can't. I can't impact US Congress.
Yep.
I can't impact the Senate. I can't impact, like, wars that are going on in the world, and I can't impact the alien stuff. So if I can't make an impact on it, it's just not relevant to me.
Yes.
Right? It's just not relevant to me. And if it's not relevant to me, unfortunately, I don't have an opinion on it. I don't want to be involved with it.
But this is great because this is think of all of the things that have happened since you've had this mindset, and hey, you're still fine, still here, and actually you're thriving. And I think that's nice for people to kind of know and see, because I think there is that FOMO of withdrawing yourself from kind of the current cultural conversation. You feel a sense of FOMO, you feel a sense of disconnecting to all of these things, but it's nice for people to know and see that, hey, it's fine, everything's fine over here, just ignore it. The world still goes around, you can't impact it. With building your network and taking who you do allow and who you don't allow into your life seriously, how do you go about attracting high quality people and guests? Obviously, as the podcast's grown, you have more kind of influence and authority, but how do you go around finding and noticing when someone's worth listening to, when someone's worth building a relationship to? And look, you're a very open guy. Like, you'll give anyone the time of day. You're not just one of those people who's like closed off. You're very fucking busy, but you're very open to people as well. But then the people you choose to kind of like, right, I'm going to go deep with you, or we're going to kind of build a relationship. What is it you look for in those people to actually build a solid, like, lifelong, long-term games with long-term people?
Focusing on the friendships of first. I follow Hormozy very closely, and I take, this like approach very seriously. Does the individual say good things about me behind my back? And secondly, does he move me forward towards a goal?
Yep.
Simple. And 99% of people don't fall into both brackets. Most people don't fall into both brackets. It might be one. You might be lucky to have someone in one, and it's an angel that falls into both. So my partner, for instance, she falls into both. She says good things about me behind my back, and she moves me towards my goals, which are the podcast, the business, even just like on a broader impact scale. And a lot of people will say that they're behind you on a goal, but then they're actually envious and jealous, and they have deeper, like, basically motives that are going on. And you can kind of spot this a lot of the times, and there's nothing wrong having like a business relationship with someone, but you kind of has to be quite known, right? It has to be quite known that, like, we are basically friends in a business capacity, and I have a bunch of friends that, like, I am friends with in a business capacity, and we've actually made deals with each other, like partnerships and so on, and they've introduced me to other people. We've paid referrals, and I paid them out through my company and so on and so forth. Do you get me? It's a business relationship, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like, there's literally nothing wrong with that. You could still go for a drink with that individual. You can you can fucking play volleyball with a person if you want to, but you kind of understand that that's kind of it, right?
Yeah.
And they're part of, like, the season of your life with that. But then an individual then who truly is like an actual friend, the unfortunate truth is that you don't actually have that many friends. And you probably won't have many friends. And the best way to test that is going to be with time. Because when you leave the gates of university or school, so on and so forth, you're all friends because you're all roughly the same. You're all broke. You're all from the same hometown. You're all from the same, area, same interests. So you don't have much differentiators. Some guys could be taller, better looking, faster, stronger, but generally it doesn't really make a difference. But as the years go on, and I'm going on 28 this year, we've seen a massive disparity in basically people pushing on and moving on. Now, the reason why some people don't push you, aren't behind you and move you towards a goal, is because they realize what they could have been as a result. So they look at you, and bear in mind, I am the D student. I got all C's and D's in my GCSEs, the equivalent in Ireland. And in my leaving cert, which is your A levels, I studied for 2 years straight and got 485 out of 600 points, which puts me in like the top 20 percentile. Like, horrific, right? So I did all that work and I still am a dumbass. In university, I had a first class honours every single year because when people were out partying and taking drugs, I was in a library with no windows. I was studying in a library with no windows and I turned green from studying for so long. My face turned green I'd been in there for 6 months. People said it was extreme. I got a 1-1. That's what I say. All right. And I was the only student, not the only, but one of the only students to get 4 1-1s in a row. I'm more stupid than you. You got to think about that. So again, we're roughly the same. But as time went on, I just took those values forward, like knowing that input equals output and more input equals more output. I was able to take that forward. So now as the chess pieces have been laid out and there's been a couple of moves of chess being played, we can see that massive disparity. And the individuals who thought that they were quite similar to you actually aren't, and that they're not the ones that are pushing you forward. Now, some people are. I have a few close friends, like very, very close friends that are. Actually, some of them are coming to stay with me here pretty soon. But most you'll find that they don't push you on. Now, the talking behind your back scenario, unfortunately, you can never really test that. You just have to trust and have faith in that. But for the most part, those individuals who will strive towards a goal will be in that bracket.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the unfortunate truth. Like, that's just a reality of life. And you can say that people don't talk about that, but the reason why that's a problem is because a lot of people will get their coping mechanism or their dopamine rewarded by talking about individuals. And at times, I've even done that at times. You'll say something about someone passive aggressively or whatever, and that will have that coping mechanism while you aren't that individual. And that's just it's just a factor of life, right? You go all the way back to like Roman Empire when people had, when they were trying to appease the people of the city and they were trying to get them to not revolt and not throw their hand up and not talk shit and not talk rumors. That's the problem that they were dealing with back then. And it's the same problem right now. All the secrets and conspiracy and bureaucracy that comes with building and so on and so forth. It's a massive component. So that's the first case. The second case in that then is that I generally try to remove myself from a lot of stuff. I'm largely like out of the game. And I've said this to you before as well. The kind of sometimes the issue I have with being part of a group. So let's say a Red Pill community or the Twitter community or like let's say the Instagram Ass and Abs community or even the YouTubers community is that you are kind of recognized as that individual in that group. My approach to a lot of this stuff is just being a category of one. It's just you are that individual. You are the niche, you're the product, you're the service, you're that guy. You're just someone who's on his own. Sam Ovens, as you mentioned before, he is that person. He's quite close. I know with like Chris Doe and Alex Ramosi and Cody Sanchez and stuff. But he's not like them. He just is himself. And I often find that to be very important because what you'll find is that when these things start splitting and the pieces of wood start to splinter, you'll find that you can go back to those groups. And that's the easy option out, is to go back to be with your high school friends and in the pub and drinking and taking drugs and whatever. That's actually the easy option out. The other option, when you go out on your own, that's the hard option because people see Sam Ovens now with his 9-inch hair and all this stuff built, but they didn't see those 2 years period where he didn't leave his house and he let go of all that previous identity. And that's why he's left with the friends that he has, and I'm pretty sure he's happy with the friends that he has.
Yeah.
Right? But he was able to iron out that group. So that's the friend side of things. To do with the guest side of stuff, then the guest for the podcast, I think the way I look at it is that it's nearly someone that I want to become in a way, or it's a trait that I want to admire and become. So someone like Justin Waller, for instance, he's a very honorable man. No doubt about it. He's good at integrity. He's a honorable, virtuous, really good man, and I learn a lot from him. Someone like Sterling Cooper kind of reminds me of how I should be a bit more relaxed at times, maybe to some degree, right? Because you can have all the wealth and the fun, but you kind of have to have the fun. Someone like Jack is someone that I massively look up to because Jack is like, he's like Superman, right? He like picked up guitar and he can play guitar perfectly in like 20 days or some shit. You know what I mean? Like, so they're individuals I nearly strive to be towards for one particular trait. It might not be all their traits, but one particular trait. Someone like Dr. Gadsad, who's 50 or 60 years old, he's like voracious reader and learner, and that's something that I would take from him, was like the goal is to be ever evolving and have that hermit crab effect, the shell being shelled and comes out and you have a new identity. So there are different kind of instances of that, right? And generally how we kind of develop those relationships is like, it's obviously a two-way street. You know, they would have to see something that's obviously valuable within me as well. And I just generally, for the most part, just try to be as like welcoming and as kind and as hot,
as hot as possible.
As possible, really, you know, and just trying to be an individual that is there to like help. So what I often kind of say to some guests as well, and at the end of it is like, which is true, like you've done so much for me, like I would love if there's anything I can do for you, basically, right? And it's a two-way system. And then as time goes on, it's not forced, right? It's like dating. If you go up to a bar, if you go up to a chick in a bar, she's like, this guy's a loser. But if you stay far away and you kind of introduce you to a friend and so on and so forth, she'll realize that this person's decent, right?
Well, it's giving without expectation of anything in return. And that's so it's unconditional giving, and that comes from a place of abundance, and abundance recognizes abundance, and that's in various areas. Yes, financially, but also that can come from peace, that can come from various areas. And I think game recognizes game.
Quick one from me, guys. If you are a modern creator looking to grow and scale your personal brand, you like the way I think and solve problems, you're looking to dial in your brand, positioning, and leverage authentic, no BS marketing that is aligned with your brand's vision and mission, and you're interested in working together more closely, please feel free to reach out on IG and we can discuss just that. Back to the episode.
One thing as well that I realized on the friend thing, because that's very topical for me, and it's a very big element.
Yeah.
Something that I've struggled with for a long time too. It's just the fact that sometimes you'll find that like it's very hard to like relate to other people, and this is a big thing that I find with. I find it very difficult to be around someone who drinks alcohol and who like parties. Even though I liked alcohol when I drank alcohol, and I liked the club scene, and I liked music and so on and so forth. But I find it very difficult to have that. Same with someone who just doesn't have the same like ambitions as me, and even though like they could be doing great in their own side, but I find it very difficult. It's kind of like, it's kind of like being like a gym bro and then finding someone who's like into calisthenics. It's like, we're just different. There's nothing wrong with what you do. Work away. I hope you're happy with what you do. But I find it quite like difficult like that, and it's sometimes they don't understand your scenario and you don't necessarily understand their scenario. And that's a big part of like that kind of like gaping period. Now, it doesn't mean you need to like cut that person out or whatever. It's just a fact that you have to realize that when you do hang out with that individual or you spend time with that individual, it's probably not going to be a type of conversation that you generally have on a regular basis, or something that you really want to do on a regular basis. And that could be what's taking you away from your core mission and values, right? And that is why the people like Sam Ovens, Charlie Morgan, Iman don't do podcasts. They don't, right? And the reason why is because they have their core focus. They have people around them that put them towards or drive them towards that core focus. They have a few friends and smoke cigars or whatever they do. But at the same time, they're not really opening up that door to anyone and anything for fear that it will take away from the goal and the mission.
So a big thing I've noticed with you over the maybe 4, 5, 6 months we've known each other now, and I love you dearly, brother. But I really feel like sitting here across from you now, like the identity you have becoming more and more refined yourself, and stepping into, man, your path is just, I'm so excited to follow along. But yeah, the identity and who I'm looking at, even over that short period of time, who I'm looking at and communicating with, just I feel your identity in there with as a company owner, as a business owner, and a fucking good one, a fucking amazing one, the best, and it's really inspiring. I wanted to, and you just talked about it now briefly, because I think this is a really big topic, and I think this is actually something, once you let go of this, you forget that this was even a thing, and you just spoke about it, and that's alcohol. And I think you're coming up to, or you have done 500 days sober now. How was that shift in identity for you as someone who used to drink? How was that to where you are now? What are some of, I don't want to say like benefits, but what is your experience with giving up alcohol?
I'll tell you everything, man. Just take a step back. So I was a 21-year-old party boy in Ibiza, like, you know, doing Ibiza stuff, right? Just
Doing
like,
Ibiza stuff.
doing Ibiza stuff, Ibiza chicks, like, you know, like 7 brain cells chicks back at the gaff, like the whole shit, right? It's like back at the villa with like 8 girls, and like the combined brain cells are like 8, right? And like that is like a part of like the grow up period. However, you have a point whereby you either continue on that and you end up like Wayne Lineker, or you take a different path and you actually figure out what's going on in the world. For me, again, I have to preface this, I never had an issue with alcohol. I feel like everyone says that.
Yep.
But it's just the fact that we are so limited on time. And all of time is just crumbling around us, and we are shortening out our time dramatically every single day. And that's with the opportunities you have in front of you, that's with your fitness, with your health, with your parents, with your families, with your partners, with your dogs. Everything is on a finite time. So if we know that time is finite, the wasted time extends the period of time that it's going to take you to achieve what you want to achieve, or even live the life that you want to live. So of course you can build $100 million business, like, you know, taking loads of drugs and drinking, like Jordan Belfort did. But you can also shorten the gap down by not splitting the focus and so on and so forth. So when I was leaving for Singapore and I was moving to Singapore, I was like, oh, alcohol is expensive in Singapore and nightclubs are kind of shit. Let's just take a break for like a month or two. And I took a break for like a month, and I was like, whoa, like, I'm sleeping better. I was like, I always struggle with sleep, probably because I was up to like 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, I've always struggled with sleep. I was always like, had a mood issue just around like being hungover, the days of being hungover. But it used to really actually get to me. I actually realized now I used to be very hungover, which is quite interesting. Probably because I drank a lot. But basically,
it's the Irish. Yeah.
It's the Irish. But I literally was like, okay, my sleep was bad, my mood was bad, and that started to improve. And at the time, I kind of signed on with a high performance coach who actually had given up alcohol too. Now, he wasn't really feeding ideas to me, but I thought that was really respectful, and that's why I actually wanted to work with him too. So 1 month rolled in, started working really well. Month 2 and month 3, it started to just improve again. So all those benefits, the sleep benefits, mood, I had more money in my pocket, everything was starting to kind of flow in a nice way. And at month 3, I was like, oh, there is a few events I wouldn't like to go to, so on and so forth, but I'm getting all these benefits. And I was working in finance at the time, and I was building my company. And I was like, hey, if I don't get pissed on a Friday night and a Saturday night, I can just do like 5 hours of work on a Saturday and move me way closer to my goal of leaving my job.
Yeah.
And on Sunday, I can just plan out all the best guests in the world and send like 7 emails that are highly curated to the best guests in the world. And I can get them lined up if I'm just not hungover. And I was like, that's interesting. Like penny dropped. That's interesting. So because of that, I did the task that I was going to do. And then as time went on, the benefit, again with time, so this is why time is interesting, the benefit that I had tried to achieve actually kicked in. I got the guests, I built the businesses, I had the money coming up, and I had like the ability to go. And then when things got really kind of hairy in my finance job, because, you know, finance is finance, I was like, fuck this. I've already done all this other stuff and have it all built, and I have this time all back. Then now when I just leave and go out building Voex 100%, I got all this time. And I have this edge on everyone else because I don't go partying or drinking. And I have all this extreme focus. We can win. Basically, we can win. All the factors, all the variables that people get wrong are controlled. And I can control all these variables and get that effect. So 6 months in, we had the business built. We had the fitness going. I had put on 25 pounds of muscle, some bit of fat, but of muscle for the most part. I was super dialed in with training. I had a clear path. I had a clear vision. And it was like, why the fuck would I go back? Like literally, why would I go back?
Yeah.
Again, back to the time. The changes that I made in month 1 were kicking in month 6. The calls that I was making in month 1 were coming through in month 5 and month 5 and month 6. So then at month 6, I was like, whoa, if I just keep on going, all those benefits are going to keep on going. And the reason why I keep mentioning time is because let's say instead of going out and drinking, right? Instead of going out and drinking, and let's say the drink and the recovery is, let's say, 36 hours before you're fully back. Let's say instead of then, I rest, I relax, I do something good in nature, I eat good food, and I do a bit of work, right? I do, like, let's say 8 hours of work for that period of time. If I do that every week for 6 months, for a year and a half, that is hundreds and thousands of hours. They all kick in asymmetrical returns. All those effects, cause and effect. The changes that I made, the reaction that comes out into the world will kick in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months in the period. And that's exactly what happened. So if I'm ever faced with like, basically someone who's up against me or someone who's competing against me, so on and so forth, it's like, well, you do all this shit and you're doing whatever. If I just don't do that stuff, because again, I'm not the intelligent one, and if I just focus really, really intently and create a boring system around my life for a little bit, then I can achieve all the stuff that that person isn't able to do.
Yeah.
And I have all that effect. So that's like the numerics, that's the money, that's the business, that's the fitness. But then there's also the relationship aspect. Because I'm out partying, I can spend better time with my partner. We can travel more. We can explore more. We can do other stuff. Like I've been like basically able to record in Bali, Singapore, Dubai, Bangkok, all across America, all across the UK in the past year. And one of the reasons why is because when I'm faced with booking a studio that's $8,500, I'm like, all right, like it's okay. Like I don't want paying all the money on partying and drinking. This is my entertainment. So I have all that like focus basically to be put into some things that I genuinely believe in. And the other aspect then, what I would say just before we finish up on this point is often, whether you know it or not, half of your week is determined on thinking about going or drinking, and then the other half is spent recovering from the drink
and the bad decisions
the bad decisions, right? And bear in mind, as a young extroverted fucking white male, it was just so easy for running the bad decisions. Just chicks, dudes, partying, going out, being back at the house. And I remember, man, when I had thought about giving up drinking for quite some time because I was really into fitness. And I mean way more than like my friends. Right? And there's nothing wrong with them. They're in good shape, whatever. But I was always way more. So whenever I drank and partied, I actually saw the effects more in the hangover phase because I was just generally at a higher level of health, like fitness, cardiovascular, VO2, all this stuff. Just generally at a high level. Like bear in mind, I ran a marathon every weekend for 6 months. Right, during COVID. Every weekend I would go out and run a marathon every Saturday. And I'd also run two half marathons during the week. So if I drink and smoke 20 cigarettes, I feel it, right? And I remember I always kind of had this idea and I was like, that's kind of interesting. And then I remember Joe Delaney saying it in a video, being like, he just got to the point when he was in his Ibiza days that he would be at a party and it would be like 8 o'clock in the morning and he would look around and be like, one, I know nobody here. And two, if I wasn't drunk, I wouldn't hang out with any of these individuals. So why am I doing it now? And that really hit home with me. And that was, I think, maybe the precursor. And then maybe like a year or two later, I was kind of giving up on it. Then from there, giving up alcohol as a result. And now like looking at it now, 500 days in, the only thing I can say is, I wonder where we'll be at 1,000. Yeah. Because it's not going to be like, I get it. It's not like you get like superhuman health, but it's like all of the benefits of all the stuff that was happening back then kick in to that degree, right? Like if, for instance, like you look at a Ironman athlete, like it's not the fact that he can run like 150 kilometers and swim and fucking cycle like 170 kilometers. It's the fact that he gets into a pool 4 days a week and does 50 laps. So then when he comes to do the 1K swim or the 2K swim, whatever it is, he makes it look effortless because he's been swimming 50 laps 4 days a week. And that's what's happening here. Yeah.
Well, so I think one of the key things like there is like this idea of you're riding a bike. It's just not drinking is like you're not sticking a fucking stick in it. Like it's it's not like you're going to be a superhuman bike rider. Yeah. It's like you just stop making it really difficult for yourself. And one of the things it sounds like with you is that you fell in love with your life. And this is what I often say to people to give up drinking is you have to fall in love with your life, but you've got to give yourself some time first to fall in love with it. It's not going to happen straight away. I see people posting, we're in January at the moment. They're like, like 11 days into dry January. It's like, like wait until you do a year, you'll feel amazing. But it's give yourself some time to fall in love with your life. And that first month, 2 months, find some things. Go take yourself for a walk.
You have to replace it.
You have to replace it.
So that's the big issue people have is that they think, if I don't drink, what am I going to do when Manchester United are playing Chelsea?
Yep.
Right? But that's the wrong way to look at it. You need to think, what can I do instead of going drinking, going to the pub, and as a result, ended up drinking and ordering takeaway and all this kind of stuff. And the best way to do it is to replace it with something that you're already interested in. Yeah. So if you're someone like who's healthy and fit and whatnot, you can split your day up really nicely. You can go to the gym in the morning, maybe go for a long walk, which is exactly what I do every day, in the evening. right? So you find that way to explore the time. Now for me with the podcast, I had extra time, so I could pour it into that, and I really did enjoy it. So you do got to pick something that you do enjoy, or something at least that you're looking to explore, right? So like you're into music, if you're into like music production, so on and so forth, you have all this extra time to put into it. Now I wouldn't go picking up something that's like super arduous initially, because like it's kind of like so this is the reason. This is actually the problem with bodybuilding preparations, like bodybuilding competition preps, is that people will bite off a lot because generally for the other period where they're not in prep, they're kind of a bit unorganized. They eat 5,000 calories a day, but because they're in off season, they might eat, you know, like a Supermax or like a Domino's every once in a while, because they're not really that clued in. And then they might go out and drink and stuff because they're still trying to put on muscle, right? So it's whatever. But it's kind of like, and then they go into competition prep and they cut everything and they go cold turkey and then they go insane and they do a massive binge. So it's kind of like, if you're going to remove the element of alcohol, increase something that you've already enjoyed, right? Increase something that you actually enjoy, which again, man, that can be anything. Like it could be like reading, it could be even like watching YouTube videos. It's just something that you want to maybe explore, right? And just something you can dial up a small bit. So I wouldn't necessarily replace everything at once, but what you will find though is after 30 days, the question isn't like, let's go drinking. It's, okay, I feel better, but I do order some bad food. Maybe I'll just cut the bad food out, and then it's the next thing, it's a snowball, right? So why returns and outcomes and time is very interesting is because in the same vein that things can snowball the right way, they can snowball the wrong way, right? So the whole idea here is that you remove alcohol, and after removing alcohol for a bit, you might clean up your training, and then you might like, oh, I'm not getting as many results, I might increase my diet, and then you might get a coach, and then you're really on this asymmetrical return. The opposite is also true. If you're into alcohol, you might switch to spirits. If you switch to spirits, you might switch to maybe, like, I don't know, taking like cocaine or MDMA or whatever, and then it's slippery slope, right? And then you find yourself out more often, and then you get into drugs and whatever, right? And to be honest, that's not an extreme example. That's the example. That's just the reality. It's not even like, oh, because I've seen a lot of guys who started off as beer, went to stout, went to cider, went to hard liquor, and then went on to drugs, and then went from like coke to MD to pills and da da da.
You're talking about with the increase of intensity of the strength of the drug there, you're actually literally immediately seeing the length of time increase. So it's now just gone from like a few beers watching the game to, oh, it's a session, which is up to 2 days. Because of the intensity of the drug. And like you talk about, it's a very immediate effect there. I wanted, before we wrap up, I wanted to take a bit of a left-right skew turn and talk about any sort of like spiritual principles that guide you. Now, recently, I know you read the book, 4 Agreements, but I also, and we'll go over those now, potentially. I also wanted to ask, do you have any sort of spiritual principles that guide you? Do you believe in God? Do you think about these things? What is that to you? Is it part of your life, consciously or subconsciously? I'm curious.
It's a good question. I think like overtly, I don't like actually like think about it. Like I'm not like someone who's like super religious. I don't like pray and whatnot, right? I don't like overtly do that as like an action. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't think that it's like real, right? Like I think that you can have your belief system and that's like something that you believe in. And of course, like it could be there, right? There could be like a higher power, it could be a God, so on and so forth. But I just don't have it like focal in my brain, right? That's what I think about it, is because like what's focal is causal. I believe like if you believe in like the Bible, if you believe in the Quran, that becomes true to you and that's your source of truth, and completely fine with that. I'm not in any way objecting to that being the truth. I just don't have like basically like a focal on it. I'm not like have my finger on the pulse. Now, in terms of like belief system and whatnot, I'm a big believer in even just like energy though. The understanding of like how we deploy our energy, what's happening in like the universe, how we basically interact with one another, how that stuff has an effect on a longer term period of time. So that's what I really do believe in, right? And that's what I'm very like of the belief of like these small actions. And with the limited energy that we have, how do we deploy those resources? And I, you know, a lot of that comes back even to spirituality, right? I just don't like necessarily research it as much. But 2 to 4 agreements, which, you know, are, you know, again, the first one is like always keep your word.
Be impeccable with your word.
Impeccable with your word. Never make assumptions.
Do not take anything personally and always do
Always do
your
your
best.
best.
Yeah.
That's, again, how I describe it is back to like effort and everything, right? Is the fact that people create a narrative of making assumptions of others, right? And assumptions of other people's beliefs and so on and so forth. If you don't make these assumptions, you're going to live a very true life, right? True to your individual, what you want, right? If you stay true to your word, which can be spiritual, it can be religious, it can be whatever it is. If you are true to that word and true, and you know, the Bible can be a true word, right? That can be something that you guide as a principle. And for me, it's just very much virtuous beliefs, like being able to someone who's integrity, who's honest, who's basically just someone who's like respectful of others, right? And having that as a core belief system, and then not taking things personally, and then not taking making assumptions. And the final part, which is the most important part, is trying your best, right? And is doing the best. And what I often find is interesting here is the fact that in the form agreements, they mention that like not every day is perfect. You will make assumptions. You will take things personally, but it's about basically like trying to maintain a strong frame with that and not always leaning into those, not necessarily vices, but those beliefs. What would be your thoughts on that?
I love it, man. I love it, man. I have to say about you, you embody that. You really do. You embody that, you know, and be impeccable with your word. And I think that's your greatest asset. It's your greatest asset.
The reason why I'm so like big on that stuff is because I just see the opposite a lot, right? And like,
have you been burnt by it?
Like in some business context, for sure, you know, like like the word of a contract. You know, like I've seen people like I've had it happen to me, like that people have not lived out a contract they put in place. That's pretty much their word, right? Their legally binding word. People ghosting, people leaving people go, and people doing all this kind of stuff deliberately or talking behind people's back. You know, I've seen it a lot in finance. People would deliberately oust people and find ways to relegate them within the company and move them out of companies. And I've visually seen those. And I've actually, as I became a manager in a lot of these companies, I heard a lot of them being said too, right? Yeah. And I see that a lot, and I see that really, you know, it's very prevalent. The other aspect about the word stuff is, you know, you'll never really hear me say about what I'm going to do. I just usually just do something and I talk about what I did. Yeah. Because I find a lot of people, they get the dopamine of saying what they're going to do and they don't keep their word to it, right? But I keep an internal agreement with myself of what I'm going to do and walking down those goals and stuff, right? Because when you are someone who goes and you want to try to get that, you know, big achievement or big goal, there's a shit ton of stuff that's going to happen in there, which I often just find people that don't move through, right? You get people that, you know, put up posts about let's fucking go and let's get it and let's get after it. But then they're not actually doing the actions in the background. And they're not staying true to their word. And then that would happen, that would be an effect on you then as a result, right? And I think the first time that really hit us was like, I remember I lost like a $20,000 deal. Like someone quite literally walked away from the contract and didn't pay the money. And me as a small startup, what are you going to do, right? Sue them? Not really. But then actually, oddly enough, because we didn't have something in place, it happened again a couple of months later, a smaller deal. And when the second one happened, I didn't even flinch because I was like, the assumption is that most people won't keep their word, but you have to keep your word within it, right? And they're just they're battle wounds. And what you want to be able to do is not lean into the wounds and get emotional, but look at the scars and learn the lessons, right? And that's hugely influential. And the way I kind of view things is like not look at things as a wound, act emotionally, just look back at the scars and look logically at them. And being able to have that approach means that when we do get burnt or someone tries to burn you or something goes a certain way, it's like, oh, I know why this is happening or how this is happening, because not everyone has the same intentions as you do. That's the unfortunate truth. You know, same with the friend scenario. Not everyone has your intentions. You also don't have other people's intentions too sometimes. They'll come into this with a different preconceived idea of how this friendship or relationship should evolve. And as a result, you go off in different directions.
Man, I learned so much from you. Just listening to you and being around you.
Wish we could keep on going.
I'm so grateful for your time. I'm so grateful for you, man. And we will keep on going. I know the conversation continues and I look forward to
my pleasure, man.
Many of these. And yeah, man, if anyone can just take like an ounce of your wisdom and your tenacity and the way you attack life, they're going to be very, very, very successful. So thank you so much for taking the time today, brother. I really
Appreciate
appreciate
it,
you.
man. I love the table setup.